recognize that resistance is always there trying to protect you, and you're going to have to navigate it. What I want to talk about a little bit today is the whole issue of resistance when we heal. First, I want to kind of define resistance because I'm using a term that people may not fully understand. So what resistance is in this context is resistance to helpful changes, right? So the first thing I want to explain is that everybody has resistance to change no matter what it is and how good it is for you. So when we're talking about baseline, people without any serious issues, they don't have chronic pain, they don't have chronic illness, they still struggle with change, because what the modern neuroscience shows us is that any change at all is considered a threat to your subconscious nervous system. So you have this nervous system, its goal is to protect you from danger and move you towards benefit. And it does that 24/7 without your conscious awareness or input. And it does things for you and to you that you don't necessarily agree with often. Mostly it's right. So this is the thing. If you're still alive, it's correct, mostly, because you wouldn't be here otherwise. But the somewhat dark side of this system is that anything you do that will challenge your current way of orienting in your life will be considered a threat no matter how technically good it is for you. And especially for people with long histories of chronic illness, chronic pain, PTSD, you'll have, let's say, let me just give an example. Some people have what I call a default of sympathetic dominance. So in English, that means that you are either very aggressive or very defensive and avoidant as a strategy to deal with your life. That would be sympathetic dominance as your default. And that's my dominance for most situations. And so my history and many other people I've worked with would be to be hypervigilant and not want to stop ever, not want to rest ever, and kind of switching between being super assertive to being super defensive, but still very active in all those ways. So when I started to work on my nervous system and gain some benefits and the ability to actually move into places of calmness, rest, and connect, kind of secure and safe connection with a lot of nervous energy, I would have these experiences that really puzzled me. So I would have, for example, a great day. I wasn't anxious. I wasn't defensive. I really enjoyed myself. I connected with others, maybe my significant other or maybe family members. It doesn't really matter. And then next morning, I would wake up feeling worse than I had in years. Angry, anxious. I have to get up and start a massive project, kind of disrupts my whole life. And later I would pause and say, why did I do that? And then I started to track it over time. And here's what I saw, which is any sudden improvement would trigger at least the urge to do that. And the other thing I want to put forth is that if you think you can control that response purely through willpower, think again, because your willpower doesn't have a chance against your subconscious system. If it decides it wants to do something, you might want to ask someone to lock you up in chains, and that's about the only way that you'll avoid doing that thing, because it's going to do what it's going to do. Now, you would think that sounds kind of like a failure, but it isn't, because what I discovered is what you have to shoot for is an average change. So instead of expecting yourself to blissfully float into ease and comfort and all these places that you crave, you have to spend time, little bits of time in them, and then expand your capacity to tolerate being safe and at ease. It seems absurd, right? You're like, well, why would I have to struggle with that? Well, you would have to, because your subconscious system is resisting something different that it's not familiar with. And it's not sure about it, because it's like, well, if I stay here too long, I'll be eaten by something. And that's the metaphor, or I'm going to be betrayed by someone, whatever your story might be in the background. What's happening is that it's deciding for you, because it's so unfamiliar with this new territory, that it labels it as threatening or unsafe. And then over time, in more places of your life, more often, you'll be able to stay there longer. And you'll be able to see that your patterns. You'll also be able to see why you use anxiety, depression, or anger, or whatever it is that you use in response to a specific situation. That takes a lot of time and a lot of observation and feedback, hopefully from a coach, a therapist, or a friend or family member can help you track that over time. And, one of mine is if I am challenged emotionally, I will gravitate towards action films to get me, and I know that subconsciously it's to get me back in that place that I traditionally use to handle everything, pretty much. And I keep catching myself. I'll catch myself and go, okay, I'm not doing that anymore. And I'll stop and I'll face something. And then, 3 weeks later, I realized for 3 days I've been watching these videos again. And, that's that automatic. And then I'll go, okay, wait a minute. I either have to face something or I have to do some sort of practice to help regulate myself again. Usually it means facing something. This is the thing I want to put forth as well, is that resistance is almost always about not wanting to face an action that you should take to move to the next level, but your system is like, I'm not sure about this. This is, speaking from my heart, oh, that's risky. I think I'd rather watch an action film, or doing something proactive for my self-care that I usually avoid. I mean, that would be good to address and say, okay, let's do a self-care thing instead, if I can, or as much as I can. So there has to be a lot of self-forgiveness and empathy in this as well. You're like, you think you should be, this is one of the traps, in a certain place, and you're not yet. And you fall down. It's like you skin your knee. And, if you think about it, that's what you're doing. You're trying to grow. You're trying to expand your maturity in a sense, or you're able to take on responsibilities or capacities, even capacity for joy and love and ease. And just like a child, I mean, think about this, because we all do this. If you saw a child try to climb a jungle gym and they fell off and skinned their knee, would you yell at them? Would you say, you didn't do that right? What's wrong with you? And so this is another thing to think about to help with resistance, is that resistance is almost always the voice of the person or cultural dynamic that criticized you no matter what you did. So keep that in mind. Do you want to try to change that your attitude towards yourself when you skin your knee, metaphorically? But yeah, there's a lot more to be said about resistance, but this one is really important because expectations that you will go from a lifetime of, maybe it's chronic depression or anxiety, maybe it's anger, explosive anger, who knows? It doesn't really matter. But to expect yourself to magically switch into a different mode and be able to stay there no matter what stimulates you from the outside world is incredibly unrealistic and is another way to set yourself up for failure. So instead, recognize that resistance is always there trying to protect you, and you're going to have to navigate it, talk to it through action and practices to reassure it that, yes, this is a better way for us to be, and you can relax when we're in this more often. And the way that it learns that is through experience. And that's why practicing is so critical. That's why self-care practices are so critical, because through experience, not through words, it will find that you are better off in that place, and it will be automatically supporting you when you go in that direction eventually. So it takes time to do that, but it will. So yeah, there'll be more discussion about resistance. It's a very valuable thing to understand, and even strategies to overcome it more often in future videos. But this one, I wanted to talk about this heads up about if you're trying to get better and you're confused by that pattern I just mentioned, then you're not alone and there's nothing wrong. You're actually on track. You just need to readjust your expectations and your attitude towards yourself in the process. If you found this content helpful, please like and subscribe. You can look forward to more videos about how to overcome chronic illness and chronic pain.